The riots do seem to be calming after several days of violent protests in response to that shooting during a police traffic stop. And for the very latest, we're joined by SABC News correspondent Cullen. Ross, good evening to you and welcome. Let's just go back to the family side of this. The grandmother of that teenager, Nahil Mazouk, calling for calm. And at this moment, there are multiple themes converging, catalyzing the violence. Just talk to us about how, where the family is and their sentiments in the center of all of this chaos, seemingly.
Yeah, good evening to you. Good evening, everyone. And it is Nadia, the name of the grandmother of Nahil, the 17-year-old boy who was shot dead by police last Tuesday. And the grandmother has been calling for calm. She said, stop. Just stop breaking windows, smashing shops, stop torching buses. We are the mothers who take the bus. We know that his mother has been at the centre of a lot of marches. She was obviously present during the funeral last Saturday. She has lost her best friend, she said. She's lost her baby. And we know that the family did also want to make sure that they were calling for justice, not against the police force as a whole, but for and against the police officer who shot Nahil dead.
Let's talk about the protests and these mass arrests, we understand, of mostly teenagers.
Well, they are protests, but they're not particularly conforming to the regular type of protest that we see in France, which is a daytime, organised by the unions with very clear spokesmen and women, with lots of flags and placards and an official agreed route of marching through the centre of Paris or Toulouse or Bordeaux, whichever city it is. These are nighttime, often late at night, midnight, 1 a.m., uncoordinated attacks in terms of the rapidity and the speed at which they move. They have been, to some extent, discussed beforehand on social media. Snapchat and TikTok were in the line of fire for Emmanuel Macron last week, wanting them to get a grip on people exacerbating the violence and organising violence through social media. But in terms of the arson attacks, in terms of the vandalism, in terms of the rioting, the looting and the violence, they're not particularly an official protest movement with a very clear defined head, as I said, or a spokeswoman or a spokesman with clearly defined demands. It is more just an evolving situation every night that the government responds to.
So spontaneous and disorganized, but certainly intentional in some ways, Ross. What are some of the themes, or some of the reasons, depending on whether you're monitoring social media or you're hearing people in a crowd or, what you're hearing following the arrests? What are some of the convergent themes around why, some people have been taking to the streets, notwithstanding the fact that a life has been taken, and we'll get back to that in just a moment. But it's not only about that moment, it seems to be about a number of other historic things too.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the killing of a teenager by police was the initial spark and a major reason behind the violence that we've seen, that reaction from people often in the suburbs of major French cities. But since then there has been a development of the violence that we have seen, the looting and the arson and the attacks on different shops overnight, regularly for 6 consecutive nights, and if it happens again Monday, that will be 7 straight nights that we have seen this violence overnight. We know that there are demonstrations against economic inequality, against people who feel left out. There are certainly underprivileged areas in all French cities. There is certainly discord, a discontent between different communities within cities in terms of their investment, in terms of their support from the central state. There is also, though, definitely a delinquent structure to these, and a delinquent element to these protests we have seen overnight. Certainly some people just want to get their hands on a TV. Certainly some people just want to smash a bus shelter and try to break into a shop to get some new clothes for free. So there certainly is a high number of people carrying out vandalism for no apparent reason, because that is a very hard way to try to show your support for a family that's lost a life, if you are trashing shops, and especially going against the grandmother and the mother who've asked you not to do that.
Ross, thank you very much for the update. And also we understand that French President Macron is going to also launch his own procedure that has been termed a way of him getting to deeply understand some of the root and, some of the causing factors behind the violence that's been seen, interviewing a number of mayors across France as well. For now, we leave that there. SABC News correspondent Ross Cullen.